What's going on, guys? Mango here, and today I'm bringing you the best Roadhog guide on YouTube. For a vast majority of competitive Overwatch's existence, Roadhog has largely been passed over in favor of other tanks that bring shields or other defensive abilities to the table. Since the recent patch that increased Roadhog's damage, he has seen his pick rate and win rate skyrocket across every level of competitive Overwatch play. Roadhog's hook combo is once again something to be feared, as it now one-shots enemies far more consistently than it used to, and has made him a must-pick in most competitive Overwatch games. Today, I'm going to go over each part of Hog's kit and give you some tips, tricks, and strategies to bring your Roadhog game to the next level. I'll put links to each section in the description in case you want to skip ahead. With that out of the way, let's get started. Real quick note here, guys and girls. As I was writing this script, an experimental patch was dropped that reduced Hog's damage per pellet back down to 6, but made the spread more consistent. This shouldn't affect his ability to hookshot combo 200 HP heroes drastically, so let's pretend that that's the case, seeing as I've already put 10 hours into this script. Okay, let's start with Roadhog's primary weapon, the scrap gun. The scrap gun has two firing modes. The primary mode fires like a traditional shotgun. The secondary fire mode fires a scrap ball that travels a short distance, then detonates into shotgun fire. The primary mode fires 25 pellets that do up to 7 damage per pellet for a maximum of 175 damage if you land all 25 pellets. It has a wide angle of fire, so its effectiveness is going to drop quickly the farther away you are from your target, so you're going to want to stay very close when using primary fire. It has the potential to one-shot 200 HP heroes if you're very close, but you'll need to land some of the pellets on the enemy's head. It can be difficult to do, but definitely something you should aim for if your hook is on cooldown. Hog's secondary fire is interesting. It fires a scrap ball 8 meters, which then detonates, and fires the same amount of pellets as its primary fire, doing the same amount of damage. If you hit someone inside this 8-meter mark, the ball only does 50 damage and does not detonate. However, if you can land the detonation point right in front of an enemy squishy, you are able to one-shot them. This is really tricky and requires a lot of practice to find the right range, but when you do land it, it feels super gratifying. Once it detonates, Hog's secondary fire also has a tighter spread than its primary fire, which allows it to deal more damage at range. This can make it very good at burning down barriers. So let's talk about using Roadhog's scrap gun from a strategic standpoint, and let's pretend like he doesn't have his hook for a second. Generally, if your target is within the 8-meter mark, you'll want to use your primary fire, and if it's beyond the 8-meter mark, you'll want to use your secondary fire. But let's think about that for a second. Say your target is 7 meters away. Do you use your primary fire on it? I would argue no, and the correct course of action would be to back up so that your target is 8 meters away, then use your secondary fire. Primary fire's effectiveness really drops off after 3 to 4 meters depending on the size of your target, so if you're in that in-between range of 4 to 8 meters, I would recommend repositioning so that your target is either under 4 meters away from you or over 8 meters away from you. This will allow you to maximize the effectiveness of each mode of fire, dealing more damage and creating more value for your team. This concept can be tricky to master, but controlling your engagement distance is key for getting more damage and securing more kills with Roadhog. One more note about Roadhog's scrap gun before we move on to the next section. The recovery time between each shot is 0.85 seconds. You can compare this to McCree's recovery time between each shot, which is 0.5 seconds. Since Roadhog takes so much longer to recover between each shot, you have to be careful not to spam the fire button as fast as possible. Instead, you need to take a second and line up each shot and make sure you're being accurate when you fire. Otherwise, your inaccuracy will be punished due to Hog's slow rate of fire. This is doubly true because the pellets from the scrap gun are actually a projectile, not hit scan, so there's bullet speed to account for when firing. Okay, now that we've gotten the scrap gun out of the way, let's move on to the most important part of Roadhog's kit, the chain hook. You're all probably familiar with how this works. Roadhog throws his chain out 20 meters, and if it connects with an enemy, it drags them in front of where Roadhog is aiming and allows Hog to get a free close range blast with his scrap gun. Where do I even start with this ability? There's so much to talk about and unpack here. Let's start with the history of Hog's hook. Hog's hook has gone through many iterations, with veteran Overwatch players being able to recall when it was one of the most buggy abilities in the game, being able to drag you through walls and obstacles and latch onto you even when you were out of sight. Nowadays, it feels a lot more realistic and fair. Most of the time. They added in the ability for the chain to break if the target you connect with quickly breaks line of sight, which is probably the best feel-good change as it severely reduces the phenomenon of getting pulled through walls and whatever. I think the most important thing to talk about with Roadhog's hook is the hook shot combo. There's a couple different levels to this, so I'm going to start at the most basic version of this combo, then work my way up to more advanced versions. So, the most basic version of this combo is to hook, then follow up with your primary shot. This is pretty easy and intuitive, even for beginner players. Now, an important tip for this combo, and maybe the most important tip for this entire hero, is to walk forward after you hook and before you shoot. This will allow you to take a step or two closer before firing on your hooked target, which lets more pellets hit and increases your chances of getting a one-shot kill. In fact, it is going to be very difficult to get a one-shot kill if you do not step forward, because you'll be too far away to do enough damage, making this tip absolutely essential for playing Roadhog. Make sure you don't waste too much time walking forward. Enemies are stunned briefly once they're in front of you, so you need to make sure that you get your shot off before they're free of the stun. Otherwise, it will be much harder to hit your shot. Characters like Mei, Tracer, or Reaper will also be able to activate their abilities and escape if you don't get your shot off before the stun wears off. This is a timing thing and will take some practice getting used to, but is absolutely essential to understand if you want to master Roadhog. Another thing we need to talk about before moving on to the next combo is where to aim once you hook an enemy. This is definitely an art and something that will come with experience, because each hero's unique hitbox means you need to aim at different parts of their body to one-shot them. While aiming directly at one hero's head can result in a one-shot, aiming at another hero's head can leave them with half health. A very, very general rule of thumb, and something you can use as a starting block, is to aim at the hero's neck or upper chest area. This will allow some pellets at the top of the spread to achieve a headshot multiplier, while still leaving a majority of the pellets connecting with the torso, with minimal pellets missing the body completely. The problem with only aiming at some heroes' heads is that, since their head hitbox is so small, many pellets will end up missing completely. You want to try to maximize the amount of shots hitting the head and body, while minimizing the number of shots that do not connect at all. Honestly, if this video gets enough attention, I might make a separate video that shows where to shoot each hero in the game once they're hooked, because I don't think a video like that currently exists. Our next combo adds a step that will help you more reliably one-shot your opponents if your primary fire doesn't finish the job. We do this by adding a melee immediately after our primary fire, adding an additional 30 damage to the combo. While this is the intermediate combo, this should be very easy to do, even for new players, as it doesn't require much aiming. As such, you should be doing this almost every time you hook someone. This is especially important for 250 HP heroes like Reaper and Mei, who can often survive the basic combo unless you land your shots perfectly. You achieve this combo by pressing melee immediately after your primary fire. If you get the muscle memory down, you can do this fast enough to finish the hook, step forward, fire, melee sequence before the enemy is free from stun. Once again, it is especially important to complete this combo before the stun wears off, as many heroes have abilities that will allow them to escape as soon as they are free from the stun. Let's move on to the advanced combo, which I'll admit I'm guilty of not pulling off a lot of the time. This combo adds a shot before the hook itself. This is usually a secondary fire since most hook targets are beyond 8 meters, but can also be a primary fire if the target is within 8 meters. So, the advanced combo will look like this: fire, hook, step forward, primary fire, melee. The added damage from the initial shot can make it much easier to secure 200 HP kills with this combo, but since you can also pretty consistently one-shot 200 HP heroes with the intermediate combo, I would say this advanced combo is not absolutely necessary all the time. However, enemy tanks with large health pools can be a great target for the advanced combo, since the initial shot can add enough damage to make cleaning up the kill after the hook a lot more realistic, since tanks will usually be able to get away if you just use the intermediate combo. Okay, now that we have combos out of the way, let's talk about how to increase your accuracy with the chain hook. A big point of contention with the chain hook is whether it's a projectile or not. While it's easy to see why you could view it as a projectile, I don't believe this is the case. Your Overwatch did a great video on this several years ago, which I will link in the description, but basically came to the conclusion that the hook is a time delay hit scan. That means, at a certain point in the hook casting animation, the game scans for the hook's hitbox around your reticle, and if it hits an enemy, the hook will connect no matter what. This point happens a few frames after the hook button is pressed, or roughly at the part of the animation where Roadhog's hand is fully extended. So, what does this mean for aiming the hook? Given this information, some high-level streamers have described using the hook as tracking your enemy, instead of trying to lead them with the hook as though it's a projectile. If you think about it, if you keep your reticle on the enemy 100% of the time, you should be able to land 100% of your hooks. When you're trying to land your hook on a target, try to think of it like you're tracking them with Zarya's beam. This may be easier to do with a mouse than a controller, so despite what I said earlier, if you're playing on console, it may make more sense to think of the hook like a projectile and try to lead your target a bit, or put your reticle ahead of them and let them fall into it. Another way to increase your accuracy with Roadhog's hook is to play in tight places like hallways or small rooms, which forces your enemies into a narrow environment. If you're in a hallway that's 5 meters wide with an enemy, they simply don't have a lot of room to dodge your hook. This makes Roadhog great at shutting down flank routes, as they're usually much more narrow and confined than any other part of the map, and enables Hog to more easily land his hook. You can also look to catch enemies as they go through doorways. For instance, if you think an enemy is going to make a break for a health pack in a different room, instead of trying to track them through the chaotic environment, just aim at the door and let it rip when they get close. Another example of this tactic is choke points. If you know the enemy team is going to be pushing through a choke point, it's easy to throw a hook out and snare an enemy as they're clumped up, even if you don't have a specific target in mind. Another thing you don't want to forget about when it comes to Hog's hooks is its ability to disrupt other abilities. Being able to hook a Reaper or Pharah out of their ultimate can be the difference between winning and losing a fight. Charging Reinhardts are another prime target for your hook, as his movement is predictable and landing a hook while he is pinning your teammate can save their life. Additionally, if you're squaring off against another Hog, look to hook them out of their Take a Breather ability. If you're able to cancel their healing, this is likely a death sentence for them. Here's one more technique when it comes to Roadhog's hook. Once hooked, you can quickly look left or right and drop your victim about 90 degrees on either side of you. This can be extremely useful if you're going for environmental kills, as you can hook someone and quickly drop them off the edge. This is a very popular strategy for Hogs on Ilios Well, and a great way to get rid of low mobility, high HP targets like Reinhardt, Orisa, or Sigma. Another utilization of this technique can take place when playing around a corner. When playing around a corner, you can try to target an enemy tank with your hook, pull them around the corner, then body block them to make it hard for them to get back around the corner, which will give your team an opportunity to punish while also making it harder for the enemy tank to get heals. Some closing thoughts on the hook. While you generally want to be aiming for low HP targets to insta-kill for your hook, sometimes the battle gets really chaotic and you don't want to waste too much time looking for the perfect target. Things can get really overwhelming for a Hog if a fight starts to break down, and in these instances, it's best to hook something than nothing at all. At these times, big unshielded targets like D.Va, Hog, or Wrecking Ball are your best friends, even if you aren't able to confirm a kill on them. Roadhog's chain hook is definitely a skill that is acquired over time, and the more you practice, the more your gut will take over and you'll find yourself landing more difficult hooks more frequently. You can help yourself by putting yourself in a situation that makes it easier for you to land hooks, such as occupying a flank route or playing at a critical choke point. Perfecting the intermediate combo is a must, and as you become more comfortable with this hero, you can begin working the advanced combo into your gameplay. Okay, now that we have chain hook out of the way, let's talk about Take a Breather. This is going to be a short section because this is a pretty basic ability. Take a Breather heals you for 300 damage while giving you 50% damage reduction for 2 seconds during the animation. The first thing I want to talk about is when not to use Take a Breather. Do not use Take a Breather if you have a healer nearby and you are not close to death. This robs your healer of ult charge, and since support ults are more impactful than Roadhog ults, you want to make sure your healers are healing you if possible. Try to save Take a Breather for when you are away from your healer or in immediate danger of dying. I've seen some Roadhogs use Take a Breather early on in the poke stage of the fight when they still have both healers available, only to get caught out a few seconds later and die because they don't have personal healing and damage reduction. Make sure you save Take a Breather for when you need it most. Don't just use it because you're impatient. While Roadhog doesn't have a shield like Reinhardt, Orisa, or Sigma, he can use Take a Breather to turn himself into a meat shield for an ally who is in danger. For example, if you have an ally who pokes out too far and starts getting focused down by the enemy team, jump in front of them and activate Take a Breather, then turn your back to the enemy team. This will allow you to soak up what might have been lethal damage for your teammate. Bonus points if this ally is a healer who can then charge their ult up on you afterwards. Last couple points on Take a Breather. The damage reduction it provides can allow him to survive a D.Va or Junkrat ult, and if you're a real pro, you can use Roadhog's large frame in this instance to protect smaller allies from the blast. Additionally, while Take a Breather does not heal if Hog has been anti-naded, the damage reduction still applies, so he'll still have a little protection in these scenarios. Okay, we're finally at the last part of Roadhog's kit, his ultimate, Whole Hog. Once activated, Roadhog crams a top loader into a scrap gun and begins firing shrapnel in a horizontal rectangle in front of him. Each pellet that connects with an enemy provides significant knockback and can do a total of 4,928 damage overall if every pellet connects. Since it's capable of outputting so much damage, it can be extremely lethal to immobilized enemies, so you should look to go on the offensive with it if there are enemies stuck in a grav, or if you're able to trap an enemy in the corner with it so they can't fly away. Its high damage output also allows it to single-handedly destroy Symmetra's barrier wall, which only has 4,000 health. Sometimes, I'll even use this ult to quickly dispatch a Reinhardt shield if it's full health, which will put the enemy team on their back foot with no shield to hide behind. Another quick tip about Whole Hog, using it will refill your ammo, so you can fire all your shots, ult, and then have full ammo again in order to maximize your damage per second. You can also use its knockback to go for environmental kills if you're fighting near a cliffside or pit. The point on Nepal's Sanctum is great for this, as you can activate Whole Hog under the covered end of the point and knock enemies clear off the point into the pit. Defensively, you can use it to knock back dangerous enemies, such as an ulting Genji or Winston, to prevent them from getting an elimination on a critical member of your team. You can also use it to clear the enemy off the objective if you need to capture the payload, secure a point, or prevent the other team from stalling. Whole Hog is one of the most situational ults in this game, and you need to be careful when you use it because Roadhog is extremely vulnerable for the ult's 6-second duration since he moves 25% slower and is unable to heal himself. Unlike most ults in this game, which I advocate using frequently instead of holding for a perfect 6-man kill, I recommend holding on to Roadhog's ult unless you're sure you can use it without dying, or you're in desperate need of the knockback ability. When Roadhog whips out his ultimate, he becomes a magnet for enemy fire, so pulling it out when you're surrounded by the enemy team is an easy way to feed their ultimates. Instead, save it for when you have a shield, cover, or at least some level of healing to support you. Now that we've gotten the different parts of Roadhog's kit out of the way, let's talk about what playstyles you can utilize to get the most out of Hog. There are two general playstyles you'll stick to with Roadhog. For lack of a better term, I'll call them Flank Hog and not Flank Hog. You're probably already familiar with the term Flank Hog, as this type of playstyle can be extremely punishing in lower ranks where there's less communication. This is exactly what it sounds like, taking your Roadhog away from the rest of your team to go on a flank route in order to hook a low HP member of the enemy team for an insta-kill. These kind of picks are a great way to start a team fight and can create an opening for the rest of your team to roll onto the enemy team with a newfound numbers advantage. This playstyle is pretty cut and dry. Take a flank route so that you're able to approach the enemy from the side or rear, then try to hook an enemy for an easy kill before they notice you. If you're able to secure the kill, you can either push in if the rest of your team decides to push, otherwise, you can fall back and use Take a Breather to heal any damage you may have taken. If the enemy team pushes you, you can retreat back to your team for support, but if they don't push, you can wait until your hook is off cooldown and look for another pick. This works really well in lower ranks where there are less people in team chat, so even if 1 or 2 people on the enemy team sees you flanking, they will struggle to communicate that with the rest of their team. When you're going for your flank hook, make sure not to poke out too far past your cover, because if the enemy team turns to focus you, you'll have very little time to get back to cover. Even if you are able to get back behind cover, you may have already taken too much damage, and any enemy with mobility may be able to catch up and finish you off. So make sure you limit how much you expose yourself to the enemy team when going on these flanks. Okay, so now that we have Flank Hog out of the way, let's talk about not Flank Hog. Maybe I'll call him Team Hog. Yeah, let's go with that. Anyways, unlike Flank Hog, Team Hog plays with his team. When playing with your team, you'll want to be playing close to the front line to maximize Roadhog's short range damage, but ideally behind your shield tank if you have one, in order to reduce the amount of ult charge you feed to the enemy. Your main job will be to pressure down enemy barriers with your alternate fire and look for enemies to hook into your team for focus fire. A great benefit to playing Team Hog is that he is one of the best heroes in the game at peeling for your healers. His hook should strike fear into the hearts of anyone that gets into your backline, and your large beefy frame provides ample protection for healers or other squishy allies to hide behind. According to Roadhog's backstory, he once worked as a bodyguard, so you can almost think about him being a bodyguard for your more delicate allies. Well fam, that's all I got for you today. Hopefully you enjoyed the content and learned something new. And if you did, be sure to like and hit the subscribe button below so I can keep putting out more content like this. If you have a question about anything or think I missed something, be sure to drop a comment below. Until next time, this has been Mango, signing off. Where's this Mercy at? No. Thank you. By the hog. Yeah. No, hog low, hog low, hog low. I think he's dead. Oh my god, I missed the hook on him. Nice, it's just hog, I think. I got my hook back in a second. Nice. Nice, good shit.